Blockades using various forms of obstructive direct action are an established option for communities and campaigners wanting to defend ecologically and socially important areas from destruction. Environmental blockades at the point of destruction were popularised as a form of action from the 1970s through to the 1990s. During this period, many new tactics, such as tree sitting and tripods, were developed, and older ones, such as barricading and lock-ons, adapted. Between 1973 and 1997, close to 400 blockade-based campaigns were carried out around the world. A number of the tactics and approaches they generated were collected in handbooks such as the Intergalactic Deluxe Guide to Blockading, Road Raging, and the Earth First Direct Action Manual, all of which remain useful guides today. One protest wave that helped establish the strategy and inspired campaigners in the US, Solomon Islands, Canada and other places to undertake their own blockades started in Australia in 1979 and went through until 1984. This kicked off in August 1979 when local residents stood in the path of logging vehicles to protect rainforest at Terania Creek in New South Wales. Having spent 5 years employing orthodox methods of lobbying and public submissions, their turn to direct action was driven as much by their separation from mainstream urban environmental organisations as by their desperation to save the forest. With participants largely drawn from the alternative back to the land community of northern New South Wales, the blockade drew on the solidarity and experience of protesters who'd previously been involved in anti-war and union movements, as well as battles with local authorities over zoning and building regulations. Backed by a protest camp and utilising then new methods of consensus decision making, blockaders delayed work for 4 weeks. They used tactics including placing bodies, objects and vehicles upon roads, digging ditches and flooding areas, and occupying and connecting trees with steel cables. As pressure mounted, the New South Wales government called a halt to logging, and following further direct action, the area was protected within 3 years as part of a new series of national parks. The Terania Creek blockade was followed by others, which lasted up to months at a time and involved up to thousands of people employing direct action. These included blockades against sand mining at Middlehead Beach, road building through the Daintree rainforest, the flooding of the Franklin River, and logging at Greer's Scrub, Mount Nardi and the Errinundra Plateau. These campaigns were often initiated by and involved local residents, but at times they generated conflicts with others living in the area, whose income and identity was connected to logging, clearing and mining. Blockades also drew on people from other parts of Australia, and over time a group of experienced blockaders known as the Nomadic Action Group emerged. Depending on the remoteness of the location, there were opportunities for locals and others to contribute in ways that included varying degrees of risk. Occurring in a settler nation, some blockades involved members of First Nations, whilst others saw conflict over consultation and other issues. These blockades were ostensibly and officially non-violent, although what that meant in practice differed highly, and over time different approaches to codes of behaviour and acceptable tactics emerged. Some campaigns led to immediate wins and protections. Others were lost but had a longer term impact in terms of mining and logging practices being phased out and areas being placed under protection in the years that followed. As a whole, they helped introduce and popularise concepts regarding ecology and environmental values amongst the Australian public. They also encouraged Australian activists to reach out and act in solidarity with First Nations and other communities struggling against ecological destruction in the Pacific, Southeast Asia, the US, South America and Canada. These were also some of the first campaigners to alert the world about the dangers of climate change and link it to other forms of exploitation. By engaging in blockades, communities generated a range of outcomes beyond simply physically impeding the activities they are opposed to. Then, as now, blockading shares benefits with other forms of disruptive action by allowing campaigners to demonstrate commitment to a cause, draw attention to their concerns, and promote alternative values and understandings. It can also give them the power to coerce their opponents via the imposition of financial and political costs. Blockades can temporarily or fully halt an activity while lobbying, litigation and other strategies progress. Indeed, they rarely occur in isolation from other means of action. Further to this, blockades provide opportunities to broaden the field of conflict, critique and expose existing social, political and economic relations, and can expose the state's repressive nature and complicity with destructive or antisocial activities. Depending on how it fits in with other strategies, blockading could also have a prefigurative element in demonstrating that people can directly deal with an issue without recourse to mediating bodies. Thanks for listening to this brief history of Australian blockading. To find out more about this period, you can check out these books and resources. Further guides, case studies and other information about blockading, as well as other forms of campaigning, can also be found at the Commons Social Change Library.